every single cent spent will increase the quality.
Think of the things that I'll do to you. Things that I'll do to you.
Hey guys, welcome to the studio, to the A studio that will be reconstructed in a couple of days. Actually, tomorrow I'm getting like the biggest delivery ever to the studio. 1.2 tons, and that's just like a quarter or fifth of everything that will go in here. A full room within a room studio. So today I will spend my time online researching and thinking about what kind of equipment to get. There will be a huge desk with a lot of outboard gear, probably maybe even new speakers, a lot of cables, interfaces, all that kind of good stuff. So a really fun day for me. I just love gear, as you know. I mean, who doesn't? For example, I spent like, I'd say 90% of my money. I reinvest either into my music or into like the studio, which is for me a tool, a very important tool to make my music faster and in the best way possible. The B studio right here, which is at the moment the main studio, is equipped fairly nicely. We got like a big keyboard, big screen, set of speakers, and a little bit of outboard gear. So whenever I have a budget, I think about what is the most important, where should I spend the most money, what is the weakest link in my chain, and start replacing this to like get the quality up step by step. And this might be also good advice for you. If you have a budget, you want to spend it, what should you buy? What's like the main priority so that you don't spend a lot of money on something that isn't that important, you might not use a lot, or that might not make a huge difference depending on how much money you spend on it. All of that also highly depends on what kind of music you make, but in general, I personally, nowadays, modern music production, pop, urban, electronic dance music, I think the key, the number one thing you should spend the most money on is actually your computer. It's the centerpiece of every studio nowadays. If it runs slow, it will cost you a lot of time. It's always your bottleneck. If the computer is slow, you just can't really work. I'd say the next thing is a link to it. It's the stuff you have on the computer, software, EQs, compressors. Like you need like at least a foundation of plugins to actually start working, and synthesizers. Logic, for example, comes with everything you need. So if you have Logic, you're fine. Most other DAWs as well have like packages that are a little more complex so that you got enough to just get started. Then the second most important piece of gear in a studio is actually your room, the room acoustics. If you're working in a room that just sounds like trash, even the most expensive speakers, the most expensive gear, you won't be able to judge what you're doing. For example, here in this room, it's acoustically fully treated, except for the ceiling, which is my next mission. And also the studio upstairs will be fully acoustically treated to the max. But yeah, this room right here, it has slight problems. For example, at 130 Hertz, we're losing 4 dB. Which isn't that much. Like the frequency response of this room is pretty good, like way better than most home studios. Because like the back wall is 0.5 meter absorbing, the side walls are like this thick. So it makes it really hard. You sometimes sit and EQ like a bass line by 2 or 3 dB, and the room changes more than you actually just changed on the song. So you're kind of guessing, and you can only mix in reference to other elements. But if you start your song with elements that do not fit and are frequency-wise a little shady, you build up on that and compare it to that, and you end up with a mix that just doesn't sound good. It's really hard to judge the right kick sample. Like basically the room is really important. Before you spend 1,000 or 2,000 on an interface or a compressor or speakers, put it in the room. 100%. Like that's, if there's anything you learned today, then that the room is the most important. The third most important thing I'd say is your conversion, AD/DA conversion, your sound card, your interface, that thing where every single sound goes through. Luckily, nowadays, all of them are at least very capable. I think you can get away with using, for example, this audio fuse. You have a limited amount of ins and outs. This really depends on what you do. If you record a band, you need something with more in and outs, which is more expensive. If you just make electronic music and every once in a while record a guitar or vocal, this is enough. The more you record, the more is analog going into your computer, the more you should actually spend on the sound card. The sound that comes out of it isn't that important. It doesn't change there a lot. But the conversion from analog gear to your computer, there you can actually lose quite a lot. There is a noticeable difference. If you A and B compare them side by side, which I did like years ago, it's unfortunately the more you spend, just better. But diminishing returns, the more you spend, the less better it kind of gets. Can get quite expensive. For the upstairs room, I would probably spend the most money for new gear on a new interface. Then actually number 4, but it's also like 3 at the same time, because I'd say it's on the same level as your interface, are your speakers. Most speakers that are above 500-600 are like have big enough woofers to go low enough, especially for electronic music, pop music, urban music. You need to have that low end. You need to be able to hear it. So I'd recommend like a 7-inch, 8-inch woofer. And also here, the more you spend, the better. I used to have for 8 years those Yamahas, which are decent, like for the money, pretty good. And now I upgraded to the big ones that actually look smaller on camera because they're way behind. They are 4 times in price, but if you A and B switch between them, the difference is like day and night. It's huge. And if you have the budget, I'd recommend to go above like the entrance KRK Yamaha kind of level. Go to like 1,000, 1,200 per speaker, and you're in a range where it will last your entire life. And also, whenever you buy speakers, please order them, put them in your room. Again, the room is more important, and test them in that room and compare them. Buy 3, 4, and just send the rest back. Usually most stores are okay with that. They even encourage you to do so, because you need to find the perfect speaker for your taste, your room, and the music you create. And next up, the creative tools, I'd say. A keyboard, maybe a controller, maybe an MPC, like stuff you play around with. Maybe even outboard analog synthesizers to generate sounds. It's a very great creative tool. I don't think it's necessary to make great music. You can also do mostly everything almost within the box. But if you have a piece of gear that inspires you, or you come up with crazy automation because you can just like record whatever you do on a synthesizer, that's definitely a huge benefit. I personally sold all of that kind of stuff because I didn't really use it. I had a lot of synthesizers. I was just too lazy. There wasn't a big benefit, and I used to ghost produce a lot, so I had a lot of clients. And if they complained about something in the box, I can just recall it. If you use outboard gear, it just sucks. But since I don't produce for other people anymore, the A Studio, the new one, I will get back into analog gear because it's really fun. And I don't want to necessarily say it enhances the sound, but there are certain sound types, characteristica you only get with analog gear. So it's good to have a little bit of both worlds. And speaking of analog gear, that's like maybe the least important, having outboard compressors, EQs. Again, it's nice to have if you actually use them. It gives you certain types of sounds you wouldn't get otherwise. Most software is getting really, really close. It's sometimes so close that it's just a little bit different and not worse in any way. The only exception is if you record a lot. If you record a lot of voices, guitars and everything, get preamps. I would even put the preamps on the same level, on level 3 with your interface. Most interfaces have built-in preamps, but like an outboard special preamp that has a certain characteristic can really enhance your recordings. Then we got all of that small stuff, cables, for example. Don't buy the really, really expensive ones, because that's just like, I usually call it studio voodoo, because it's in a range where you can't hear it. Just buy like the middle price kind of segment cables. Don't go for the really cheap ones. They usually sound okay. There isn't a big difference, but the quality is usually less and they might break. And if you build them into the wall or wire them underneath the floor, you want to make sure they last really long. And then also we got headphones. I mean, headphones, Very, very subjective. I personally don't mix with headphones. I just use them to check for clicks and like little, very quiet stuff. Also to check how the stereo behaves on headphones. I know a lot of people that mix with headphones and are fine with it. If you mix with headphones because you can't otherwise, because you can't be really loud in your home studio, then put it on the same level as speakers. And I think for mixing, and really be careful, there are headphones for studios that are maybe for singer-songwriters while recording that isolate really good. And then there are headphones for mixing. You need to buy the ones for mixing. And they usually are at least 150 euros and up. The decent to good ones are at around 250, 300. I think that's it. I think I covered everything. I mean, the producer couch in the back is always nice to have. Diffusers, if necessary. Oh, I almost forgot. Microphones. Again, if you record a lot, get good microphones. That's like the Shure, what was it? 7BM? Forgot, like, you know which one, the Michael Jackson thing. It's good, and it's just like 250, I think. But again, if you record a lot, get a good mic. Might be, again, on the same level as interfaces. Like everything that is part of the recording chain is on the same level. So mic, preamp, interface, ADDA converter. Try to find the weakest link of those in your studio and replace it with something that is more capable. You'll definitely hear a difference. Like especially the recording chain, there every single cent spent will increase the quality. But yeah, thanks a lot for watching. The rest of this entire Sunday is just me sitting here online researching what kind of equipment to get and see if I can actually afford it, because that's the biggest problem. There is a ton of stuff out there that is so expensive. I mean, you can spend 300 on an interface, you can spend 12,000 on an interface. Will you hear the difference? Probably yes. Is it worth the price difference? Probably not. I don't know. I always want to have the best possible, but it's just too expensive. If you have any suggestions, questions, leave them in the comments down below. If there's any piece of gear you think I definitely need for the new studio, let me know about it. I'll check it out. I need some gear inspiration at the moment.